It's Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. Florida's Gulf Coast faces yet another major hurricane. Kamala talks to 60 Minutes, and just what does a post-Christian America look like? Next on the AM Update. Florida's storm-battered Gulf Coast raced against a Category 5 hurricane Monday as workers sprinted to pick up heaps of appliances and other street debris left over from Helene 2 weeks ago, and highways were clogged with people fleeing ahead of the storm. The center of Hurricane Milton could come ashore Wednesday in the Tampa Bay region, which has not endured a direct hit by a major hurricane in more than a century. Meteorologists expect the system to weaken slightly before landfall, though it could retain hurricane strength as it churns across central Florida toward the Atlantic Ocean. It would largely spare other states ravaged by Helene, which killed at least 230 people on its path from Florida to the Carolinas. As we just mentioned, that area of Florida is still cleaning up in the aftermath of Helene. One of the measures taken by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to make sure the cleanup happens as fast and efficient as possible is he ordered every single landfill in affected areas to remain open 24/7. However, one landfill in Pinellas County, Florida, decided to remain closed, so DeSantis ordered that gate to be literally torn open so that the cleanup could continue. Of course, in that area, if you have debris still just floating around on the street and you're hit with a 165-mile-an-hour wind from this next hurricane, Hurricane Milton, that would create a very dangerous situation indeed. There was a narrative floating around for a while yesterday that Kamala Harris had called Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, but DeSantis didn't pick up the phone and didn't want to talk to her for quote-unquote political reasons. Here's Governor DeSantis yesterday at a press conference dispelling that notion and taking on a reporter who tried to play politics with the deadly situation.
I didn't know that she had called, so I'm not sure who they called. They didn't call me, and their characterization of it was something that they did. It wasn't anything that anybody in my office did in terms of saying that it was political.
Given the severity of the storm, since I did want to ask you about politics right now in terms of should
I don't really want to answer questions about it. This is not a time for politics. No, excuse me, Gary. You and your publication will twist anything that's done to try to make a political agenda. That's what you do. That's how you get your clicks. I understand that. I understand that's the business model. Well, but I don't want to talk about politics because, but I have a feeling that however you do, you guys will find a way to frame it. That's just your shtick. I get it. It's fine. But I don't want to participate in it. We have had to respond to a Category 4 hurricane. We've had to prepare and now respond to something that may hit as a major hurricane, may be Category 4, may even be bigger than that. We hope that it does. But that should be the focus. And I think some of these questions are trying to create some type of political angle where there's just none there.
Once again, the ruthless efficiency, the ruthless governance, and the ruthless competence, first and foremost, of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Notwithstanding, though, it is a dangerous situation as it stood on Monday with Hurricane Milton, a Category 5 storm off the coast of Florida, out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Please pray for everybody involved, and I hope that if you're in the path of that storm, that you're able to get out. Last night, Kamala Harris was interviewed by CBS News' 60 Minutes, where she talked about a number of things, I guess, including this. See if you can decipher or translate what she's trying to say.
It seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
What? Did I miss something there? So this is a question from 60 Minutes to Kamala Harris about foreign policy as it pertains to Israel and Bibi Netanyahu. Did she ever actually answer the question?
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
Kamala Harris is the predictive text of politics. What is predictive text? Well, if you go on your text message application right now and you just start typing in whatever the predictive text or whatever the suggested text or word is that pops up on your phone. Let's just do this right here. The only way I could do that was if you wanted me to, I could come and pick it out, and then I can go. That's what she sounds like. Just tapping the suggested text, the suggested word button over and over and over again. That woman could very well be president here in less than a month. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre has been promoted to senior advisor to the president. Jeff Zients, the president's chief of staff, said in a statement, quote, Karine has been a trusted advisor to the president and all of us here at the White House since day one. Her counsel will be critical to get as much done as possible for the people, American people, in the coming months. Jean-Pierre, of course, made history back in 2022 as she was tapped to become the first lesbian black press secretary. She had a press conference yesterday at the White House where she discussed the harmful misinformation coming out about the narrative surrounding the government's disastrous response to the aftermath of Hurricane Helene.
It is something, whether it's the election, whether what we're seeing currently right now with Hurricane Helene that just came through, and obviously Milton is on its way, sadly. We have to combat that. And I'm saying they're dangerous, yes, because they are. They're critically dangerous to have this misinformation, disinformation. And that's why at the top I called out, you have some powerful people out there who continue to spread conspiracy theories. It is not helpful. It is not helpful to what we're trying to do as we're trying to assist Americans on the ground and trying to figure out how the best way to respond, what they need, what their needs are. And so, yeah, it's not ideal. It is dangerous.
So that is Karine Jean-Pierre talking about misinformation and disinformation being spread online, harmful, she says, about the government's response or lack thereof to the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. So I guess if I say that FEMA's response has sucked, which is not a surprise, but FEMA's response has sucked, the government's response has absolutely sucked. Where were they for like 4 days after the hurricane actually passed through regions of Appalachia? Where were they? I guess I'm a conspiracy theorist now. Well, according to Biden's now top advisor, Karine Jean-Pierre, yes, I'm spreading harmful disinformation. And now, nothing to see here. Here's a report from KTVI-TV in St. Louis describing how non-citizens here on work visas are getting mailers addressed to them telling them to vote for Kamala Harris.
An investigation by Fox 2 finds non-U.S. citizen migrant workers are being encouraged to vote in November's presidential election. Fox Files investigator Chris Hayes found this out after an employer of migrant workers alerted him.
These union mailers were just sent to non-U.S. citizen migrant workers. They say, quote, stop the steal by stopping Trump's allies, vote for Harris-Walz and pro-worker candidates. Here's 11 of the mailers addressed to non-U.S. citizens mailed to their workplace, which alerted Fox 2. The business, which specializes in landscaping, does not want to be identified. The company's manager told us their migrant worker employees, who are from Mexico, are all background checked and have legal H-2B visas, which allow their temporary stay here. The manager explained the migrant workers are also allowed to have union representation and that they pay dues to their union, called LIUNA. But the manager cannot understand why the union would send mailers to non-U.S. citizens, encouraging their vote in the presidential election. We've tried repeatedly to get an explanation from Washington, D.C.-based union LIUNA. 3 emails to their communications department and 3 phone calls. A 4th call also went to voicemail.
So that is KTVI-TV in St. Louis. A report about how non-citizens are getting mailers from their union? How that's possible? I guess through visas, work visas. They're getting mailers from their union telling them to go vote for Kamala Harris. That's in Missouri, St. Louis. What is the innocent explanation for that? Victor Bout, the infamous Russian arms dealer released in that eyebrow-raising prisoner exchange for WNBA lesbian Brittany Griner, is now selling arms again to the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen, according to a new report. Back in December of 2022, the Biden administration made a deal with Russia to exchange bout for Griner. Griner, of course, is a star player in the WNBA. In February of 2022, Griner was detained at a Russian airport outside of Moscow, Russia. Griner was accused of possessing cannabis, which is illegal in that country. She admitted to the crime, but claimed it was an honest mistake. In August of 2022, Griner was convicted and sentenced to 9 years in prison. Before her arrest in Russia, Griner, of course, made headlines for proclaiming that the national anthem shouldn't be played before sports games. She purposely stayed out of the locker room when the Star-Spangled Banner was played before Phoenix Mercury games in 2020. Victor Bout, who is known as the Merchant of Death, is one of the most notorious arms dealers in the world. Bout had been an international weapons trafficker since the 1990s and had been linked to arms being dealt to Afghanistan, Colombia, Libya, and multiple conflicts in Africa. So now he's back at it in the arms dealing game to some of the worst criminal organizations in the entire globe. Again, he was released from the United States, so we could get a lesbian WNBA basketball player who hates this country back from Russia in exchange. And finally, John Daniel Davidson. He's a writer for The Federalist. He also written a book called Pagan America. He addressed Hillsdale College recently about what it actually looks like when America goes bad and what a post-Christian America actually means.
We are at the end of Christendom. So said Archbishop Fulton Sheen in a television address in 1974. He defined Christendom as the, quote, economic, political, and social life as inspired by Christian principles. That is ending, he said. We've seen it die. A quarter century later, St. John Paul II said, quote, even in countries evangelized many centuries ago, the reality of a Christian society, which, amid all the frailties which have always marked human life, measured itself explicitly on gospel values, is now gone. So however debatable the Archbishop's assessment was 50 years ago, or John Paul II's was in 2001, I would submit to you that it is undeniable today. Christendom is finished. It's gone. Whether we as Americans and Christians realize that or not, we have entered into a new post-Christian era in the West. And we must be honest with ourselves on this point. This change, this transformation, is not something that will be reversed in our lifetimes. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So just sit with that. But what does it mean that America has become post-Christian? At the very least, it means this, that Christian morality will no longer shape our public life. It also means that our society will no longer confer advantages or prestige on Christians. There was a long period in our history where there was a certain social expectation that a person would be a Christian, that you would go to church and that you would uphold and defend Christian morality. Almost an expectation. But no more. That's gone. It will actually consider Christians as unfit for positions of public trust. And as an example of this, I would give the example of our current vice president, when she was U.S. Senator, indicated this when she tried to block one of President Trump's political appointments because the appointee was a member of the Knights of Columbus and therefore affirmed Catholic teachings on abortion and gay marriage. That was enough, in the view of Kamala Harris, to render someone unfit for public office.
So that is John Daniel Davidson of The Federalist. He is the author of the book Pagan America, addressing Hillsdale College in brief there about what it actually means to live in a post-Christian America, the end of Christendom. And I think there's one thing he said there that is crucially important that we cannot underline enough, and that is the notion that this thing is not, if it ever gets turned around at all, it's not going to happen in our lifetimes. Why is that important? Because it reframes our thinking. We no longer look for quick fix solutions. Now, there may be necessary for quick fix measures. When we stop thinking in terms of we have to fix everything in 4 years, you start to plan for the future a little bit further down the year. You start to do what the left has done in this country for generations, and we're seeing the fruits of now. You start thinking strategically in terms of lifetimes and generations instead of elections. Now, if this thing is to be turned around, there will be some quick fix measures like winning elections here and there that pull us back from the brink to buy us a little bit more time, but those are not the solutions. Measures are not the same thing as solutions. Again, that's John Daniel Davidson, those comments given at Hillsdale College recently. That'll do it for a Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.